to Canton, Campus to Canton on the Better Sports Network.
I have very expressive eyebrows, Chris Moxley. Very expressive. Do you know why my eyebrows are expressive? Because
you don't have any other hair on your head?
We're less than 50 days away from college football starting? We're less than 50 days away. And I always think that I've had enough, but as the season gets closer, I got to scratch that itch. I mean, I'm watching old YouTube games of the bowl games that I didn't get to. But we're 50 days away, and I want to know what you are excited about seeing this upcoming season. It's Felix Sharpe, Chris Moxley. This is Campus2Canton on Better Sports Network. Anthony Rivera producing for us today, trying to make sure that we don't get fired. I think that I'm excited about this freshman class. There are 3 players in particular. Dante Moore, who, from my opinion, is like one of the more game-ready quarterbacks that I've seen. This dude started as a freshman in high school at Detroit King in Michigan. And started as a freshman. Like they were talking about this. Just imagine an 8th grader. So you graduate from middle school, and he's going into the offseason in the summer, and the coaches are like, we might have to start this dude. That's Dante Moore. Game-ready guy. Not flashy. Not flashy when you think about Anthony Richardson, but he's more on like in my opinion, the Alex Smith spectrum. Now that sounds like I'm calling him a game manager.
That was exactly what I was going to say. Alex Smith is a perfect comp for him.
That Alex Smith is who I comped him to. I believe is who I comped him to in the Campus2Canton freshman guide. He's just well-rounded. Now imagine getting Alex Smith, that talent level, as a freshman. He's going to be able to develop. I'm just really excited to see him because we could have a true freshman, an elite prospect, 5-star, starting at a big-time program in the Pac-12 for Chip Kelly's offense. That's exciting to me. Zachariah Branch. Let's stay in California. Why don't we? Zachariah Branch, freshman wide receiver, 5-star. Tyreek Hill is his comp. So you've got Tyreek Hill playing with Lincoln Riley's offense and Caleb Williams, the best quarterback in the country. USC's wide receiver core hasn't been like this group where, we're used to Lincoln Riley's system having CeeDee Lamb and D.D. Westbrook, those types. It wasn't really, Jordan Addison, by the way. It wasn't that explosive of a unit last year. They lose Jordan Addison. They've got Brennan Rice. They've got Mario Williams. They've got, some guys there. Taj Washington. Taj Washington is one of these guys who's been in college since he was since 2016. But, I think you're muted. But
I was.
But you got Tyreek Hill. You got Tyreek Hill playing with Lincoln Riley or the equivalent. I'm excited to see him. Will he return punts? Will he add the explosive element to that offense? I'm excited to see that. Oh, by the way, USC is going to be joining the Big Ten here soon. This is ridiculous. Imagine USC versus Rutgers is going to be a home game. They should play that game in Iowa. And then lastly, they should.
They should not.
They should. They absolutely should. Neutral site.
Neutral site is Ames.
They can meet in the middle. It's just ridiculous. Who's going to fly? That's just ridiculous.
Pac-12 at night in Piscataway.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then lastly, Justice Haynes at Alabama. Alabama took a step back a little bit last year. We predict that they're going to take another step back this coming year. But they can rely more on the run game. You've got Jace McClellan there. You got Roydell Williams there. They've brought in 2 freshmen, and Richard Young and Justice Haynes. And the name that I have not wanted to say I'll do this. I'll tell you the name that I have said when talking about Justice Haynes, and that's Chase Edmonds. But sometimes when I watch Justice Haynes, his ability to avoid tacklers in a small confined space reminds me of one LaShawn McCoy. That is the name that I have not said when talking about Justice Haynes. So you got game ready Dante Moore going from Detroit, spurns Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, I'm not playing for your archaic offense where your passing record is 3,300 yards and 20 quarterbacks threw for more than that last year. I'm not playing there. I'm going to Chip Kelly's offense. I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see Zachariah Branch, and I'm really excited to see Justice Haynes at Alabama. What are you looking forward to, Mox?
I want to know who the number 4 team in the country is going to be at the end of the year. That's what I want to know. So I think the top 3 is pretty set. I think entering the season, if we power rank them, it's Georgia, it's Michigan, it's Ohio State. Alabama's very close. I think you could put them in that conversation. But then there's a whole group that I think is really talented behind them. Penn State, LSU, USC, that group, Florida State, Clemson, like those are all teams who can make the playoff. So I want to know who's making the playoff as that 4 seed, because I think both Big Ten teams might get in again this year. I think that we might see, Alabama fall out for the second straight year. And so I want to know who that 4th team is, because we have a lot of talent at the top end of the power rankings. And I look at the top 10, 12, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe Washington could make it, and they're a top 15 team. And, they have a great offense. They could do something pretty interesting. Maybe Oregon, if it comes together on defense, can do something. You can make a case for a lot of teams outside that top 5 to be in the college football playoff. Now, they're not going to do the same thing TCU did last year, which was a 28-1 Big Ten championship odds, and then make the playoff. But I just want to know who that's going to be, because you have a lot of teams and you have a lot of good games, and you're going to find out really quick who is and who isn't, because LSU plays Florida State the first weekend of the season, and that game is going to have huge playoff implications, because if Florida State loses, they're probably not making it, because they got to play Clemson, they got to play UNC. If LSU loses, I think they still could, but they got to beat Alabama then. So it's a good crop of teams at the top 10, top 12.
The South is going to riot if they only get one team in the playoff. The SEC, Paul Feinbaum and them boys are going to riot.
The conference is too good is the problem. They just beat up on each other. Now they're going to add Texas and Oklahoma in here. It's going to be tough.
Who's the third best team in the SEC? Is it LSU?
It is this year.
Okay. I like Washington. You mentioned them. They've got a lot of pieces returning. I actually think Michael Penix Jr. is a good dark horse. Well, he was a dark horse earlier, but he's probably, in a top 10.
He's he's top 5 or 6 in odds currently.
Okay. Well, we missed that boat. But the exciting thing about college football, if you are getting into it for the first time, and we are opening that door to you, it is the roster turnover. This 2023 class took a lot of established names. Bryce Young, Bijan Robinson, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, CJ Stroud. I mean, it took a lot of established names. So we're looking around the country, and there are going to be guys who are asked to perform, asked to start for the first time. And it's that uncertainty that we don't really have in the NFL. That's exciting to me. Is Patrick Mahomes going to make the playoffs? Yeah, we probably know. He's probably going to end up the season in the top 3 in MVP voting. We expect Trevor Lawrence to take another jump this year. What's Kyle McCord going to be at Ohio State? I have no idea. He started one game up until this point. I have no idea. It's that the roster turnover thing is what I find really exciting. And when you look at a team like Alabama, who has been at the peak for the last, decade? They had 2 new quarterbacks, one 5-star, one very highly touted 4-star. Didn't like either of them in the spring. They say, we need to get somebody else in here. And they bring in Tyler Buchner, who he himself ran for 1,500 yards the last time he played a full season as the starter. Now, that was in high school.
That's like 6 years ago.
It was like 6 years ago. But the dude, he ran for 1,500 yards, and he looked like he was a player that could leave you in the dust. I'm excited to see, like, it's drama. And the other thing that we don't have in the NFL is like real free agency, where you have players in their prime become subject to the open market. We have that in college football. Remember the rumors about Drake May entering the transfer portal, that allegedly that these teams were trying to entice him to the transfer portal? Like, you can't do that in the NFL. You have some of the biggest names in the sport can go where even Marvin Harrison Jr. was rumored to be, like, USC was trying to snag him. Like, the biggest names in the sport are up for grabs in a way that the NFL, we just don't get to experience. It is capitalism. It is a free market. And I love it. I love the roster turnover. I love the fact that there's free agency. And we're getting closer and closer, Chris. We're getting closer and closer to that week 0 slate at the end of August. Let's talk, because we're getting closer and closer, we need to start introducing our audience to the conferences and go by team by team. We're going to do that tonight, starting with the Big Ten. With the Big Ten. Now, we're going to have to break this conference down into 2 sections. But, yeah, let's start with the Big Ten. Why don't we start with the aforementioned Michigan Wolverines, Chris Moxley. Impact players there: J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland, all guys that are returning. They lose Ronnie Bell, their leading receiver from last year, to the NFL, but, I mean, he had just under 900 yards receiving. I think the question here with Michigan is the allegation that they're going to open it up offensively.
Yeah, okay.
And let J.J. McCarthy throw the ball.
They won't. It's not in Harbaugh's blood. That's my biggest question. Like, does J.J. McCarthy take the next step? Is he even offered the opportunity to take the next step? We might not even know really what he's capable of. He's a player who thrives outside of structure, and still, through, he's entering his 3rd year, hasn't really solved that. And that was the issue of him as a prospect coming into IMG Academy. So we know that he has to take that step. And I think he has to take that step if they want to win a national championship. And I think that step is necessary by opening the offense. I just don't know if we're going to get it, because they didn't just lose Ronnie Bell. They lost AJ Henning. Mike Sainstrill moved to DB last year. Like, they lost a lot of really good, solid veteran presence in that room. A player to watch, and an impact player that you didn't mention, Cornelius Johnson. Can he step up and be the wide receiver 1 for this team? Like, that's going to be a huge, huge question. If he does, or if he at least takes a step where he could be an 800, 900-yard receiver, then we're looking, I think, a little bit better about this team, because I like their tight end situation a lot. Colston Loveland and AJ Barner are probably the best tight end duo in the conference. AJ Barner in from Indiana this year, Colston Loveland, a 2nd-year player. 2 really, really good tight ends. So it's to be seen.
Jim, this Michigan program has been, they're like the Miami Heat of college football. And what I mean by that is their recruiting class last year only ranked 20th in the country, but they've always been seen as a program that they get the talent in there, and then they develop that talent and produce, guys who can play. So speaking of development, Jim Harbaugh has a history with Colin Kaepernick. He has a history with Andrew Luck. Do you think that the question is who's going to be the QB3 in this 2024 class after Caleb Williams and Drake May? Is there the potential?
It could be McCarthy. I just think he's so inexperienced outside of structure currently. I just can't see him making that jump in a year. I could see that happening in 2 years, where they get somebody in who will actually work to develop him as a pocket passing quarterback, which he just does not want to do. I think he's really inconsistent with his reads too. Like, that pick he threw against TCU was that's just not a first round NFL quarterback. You can't make that mistake. And I think it was the first turnover of the game, and it was like, oh, okay, TCU's legit. moment, and it all went downhill from there. But I mean, I'd rather take a bet on a guy who I think is even more toolsy than JJ McCarthy. I think he has tools, but he's not like, I don't know, he's not that big. Like when you think about him as a prospect, but he's like kind of dynamic. Yeah. He fits that weird like good athlete at his size, but not like special athlete bigger. Like his arm is good, but I wouldn't call it excellent. So there's a lot of just quite like I don't think he's like a sexy NFL pick. He's never really shown that to me at any point, really.
The record at Michigan for passing yards is 3,331 set by John Navarre. I think that was the early 2000s. 20 quarterbacks. No idea. 20 quarterbacks threw for more than that in 2022. 18 threw for more than that in 2021. Michigan's team total over under is 10.5. 10.5. That's let's see. That's minus 118.
Yep.
Minus 118. Here's their schedule. And I'm going through the schedule and I'm like, where do we even get to the point where it's competitive?
Well, Michigan loves scheduling crappy out of conference games.
What did they do? Hawaii and Colorado State last year?
Colorado State.
Was it Hawaii?
It was Hawaii, Colorado State, then UConn. I think those were the three. I just don't remember the order exactly. So legitimately three of the bottom 10 teams in the country entering last season. Yeah.
That's why the people in the SEC are going to revolt, because your out of conference schedule is, well, this is what it is for 2023. They start off with East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green. That's weeks 1 through 3. Mox, UNLV and Bowling Green, they're what? Bottom 130 programs in the country? Not but 130. I'm sorry. Bottom 100. They're between 100 and 130 is what I'm saying.
They are.
Yeah. Between 100 and 130.
Probably they might be bottom 15 depending on how you project UNLV this year.
And I'm a UNLV. I like Doug Brumfeld at left-handed gunslinger.
And I like the hire they made at offensive coordinator. But I mean, we're still talking about a team that's probably bottom 20.
Right. Then they get Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana. I mean, Rutgers is a bottom. I mean, they're between
bottom 20 easily. Yeah. Okay, so they can beat like MAC opponents pretty handily, but then get absolutely crushed in conference. So like they have the players, but like nothing else. So they're probably a bottom 40 team. How about that? That's probably more reasonable.
Rutgers bottom 40 team. Nebraska has a new head coach. Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State. That's at Michigan State, October 21st versus Purdue. And then the first real test to me on the schedule where I'm like, okay, they could lose this one is at Penn State, November 11th. That Penn State team, as you said, is very good. There's a chance that might be a whiteout game.
No, they're whiteouts against Michigan State this year. It's not, which is super. It makes no sense. I don't know the deal behind it, but it's not a whiteout game. It's at noon too. Weird scheduling thing, but I actually think it would have helped if it was a whiteout game at like 8 p.m., but it's not.
Penn State, good football team. What's the word I'm looking for? What would the odds be, you think, on that game? It would be like Michigan by 4?
Less, under field goal. I actually projected it at like 1.5 or 2.
Oh, really? Okay, so a coin flip.
It's okay. Yeah, that's a coin flip. And that's on a neutral field. Michigan's maybe favored by like half a point, but I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Okay. All right. And then they're at Maryland. They'll win that game. And it's Ohio State at home. So we're talking about 2 games where there's a question there. Over under on 10.5, Mox.
So if I had to pick a side, I would choose the under because I think Penn State can beat them, and I'm pretty confident Ohio State will beat them this year. Like I shouldn't be as confident as I am, considering they've lost 2 years in a row, and I keep thinking that Ohio State's going to be. I've backed Ohio State twice, and one was like over a touchdown, the other one was over a field goal, and I did it again. But if I had to pick, I would go under because I think Penn State could be just as good as Michigan, depending on the development of Drew Aller.
I don't disagree with you. And Drew Aller, Very, very good player, a potential number 1 overall pick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We'll get to the rest of the Big Ten. We'll continue with this preview when we come back. It's Felix Sharpe, Chris Moxley. This is Campus2Canton on Better Sports Network.
Campus to Canton.
What can we expect from you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. Like, it's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite, but that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes.
Moose and Keith from Better Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition, and I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. I mean, he knows what he's doing, but I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside, and now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed, and they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 1:38 and 2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Back! Come on! Let's go! Come on, dig it! Yeah!
Keith Irizarry. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire, over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool! The champ is here! Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush, you were doing the Instagram Live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. Like, I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? What are you? David, the driver, was awesome. He's like, we're going to win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose
no!
on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations, and no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
It's time to start preparing for your fantasy football season. Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription has everything you need to win, including the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Draft Guide, your cheat sheet, one-stop shop for dominating your drafts. It's digital, Chris Moxley. That means it's constantly updated with new information. Purchase it for $26.99 or get it free with a monthly or annual All-Pro subscription to Fantasy Alarm. Start your free trial of Fantasy Alarm All-Pro and get immediate free access to the draft guide. Go to fantasyalarm.com. Now, if you are a longtime listener to this show, you know that our normal or regular producer, Will Chudy, he plays good music if we did a good job coming in the first segment. Coming back from the break on the rejoin, he gives us good music. And if he doesn't like the first segment, he gives us, yakety sax or some sad country song. We don't have that board today. So Anthony Rivera, come in here and give us a grade. Let us know how he did on that first segment.
I thought it was good. I liked the whole Michigan preview there. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the teams we got here. I like what I'm seeing on the rundown. So it's pretty jam-packed here. I like what we got going on. A+.
A+ segment from Anthony Rivera. You know what? You're damn right. You're damn right, Anthony. We appreciate that. We do a lot. We're trying to work over here. All right. Let's move on here in the Big Ten. And Mox, Illinois is a team that under Brett Bielema, I think is a team that's going to be reckoned with in the coming years. Brett Bielema has that Wisconsin roots, took them to Arkansas, and now is at Illinois. It's funny. I was looking at this team the other day doing my research, and he has a type at running back. You got to be like 6'1", 230 pounds.
Oh yeah.
That's what he likes. I think they won 7 or 8 games last year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was their best season since in a long time, maybe 2 decades. Impact players coming back, so they lose Chase Brown. Reggie Love and Josh McCray are expected to split the workload. Now, Josh McCray ran for like 500 or 600 yards his freshman season and then dealt with injuries last year, and so he wasn't really – as a matter of fact, that's what got Chase Brown to command the workload that he did, is that Josh McCray is one of those guys, that went down. Isaiah Juice Williams is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the country. He's a converted quarterback turned wide receiver. And I don't know why Illinois just has all of these guys named Juice Williams, because I used to play NCAA football with Juice Williams when Vontae Davis was there at Illinois. Luke Altmaier transfers from Ole Miss, backed up Matt Corral, and now is looks to be in line. Mox, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Looks to be in line to start for Brett Bielema. But, I mean, I don't know. They got a team total over-under at 6.5. Maybe it's not this year, but Illinois is a team that over the next few years, they could become a force in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I don't think it's this year, though. They just lost so much to the NFL draft. They lost. Witherspoon went 5 to Seattle. As Sidney Brown and Jartavis Martin both went day 2. So they lost 3 of their top corners. That's pretty tough to pull off in general. And their defensive line's really good. And they were one of my impact units. Drazon Newton's probably a borderline first-round pick. Keith Randolph. I mean, they got Seth Coleman at linebacker. Like, this is a really, really good unit. And so the defense will carry them like it did last year. But they lose their defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters. He's now the Purdue head coach. That's a concern because his scheme was excellent. Do they do what it looks like? I don't necessarily know this year. So they're going to need players to step up in the secondary to replace some of those losses. And they brought in a couple transfers who I think are pretty good. Clayton Bush, who played for the Southern Illinois Salukis last year. Do you know what a Saluki is?
I do not know what it is.
It's like this fast, long-haired, like greyhound-looking dog. But that's who he played for, Southern Illinois Salukis. I think that he's going to start at safety for them. So I think they brought in a couple players, but they're missing a lot on this defense in the secondary, which is the reason that I won't touch this win total.
At Better Network, do you know what a Saluki is? Yes or no? You mentioned that defense last year. They curb stomped Wisconsin at Wisconsin 34-10. Yeah. They beat Iowa 9-6. If you like football, you probably love that game. They got a win at Nebraska 26-9. They narrowly lost to Michigan State 23-15. You know, they lost to Purdue 31-24. They lost to Michigan 19-17. Close one for Michigan there. Yeah. On the road to the number 3 team in the country. This season, Toledo, Kansas, Penn State one is going to be tough. Florida Atlantic, Purdue, Nebraska, Maryland, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, Iowa, Northwestern. I mean, no Ohio State, no Michigan on the schedule this year, Mox. You still not touching it?
So I have them favored in 5 games. And I think the toss-ups are Kansas, Purdue, Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota. But I project them to lose to Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota. So I'm trying, like, can they beat Kansas? Absolutely. Kind of like Kansas is here still. Can they beat Purdue? Absolutely. I don't know what Purdue's going to look like, but they are head coached by the former defense coordinator. So I wonder if he comes out and they do win that game. It's just hard to get to that 6.5 number. You have to win 7 games, and I really only see like 6 likely wins. And like, I don't like their chance against Iowa or Minnesota really at all. I think they're just much better teams. So I just can't I just don't see that 7th win on the schedule.
I think you always need to watch out for Brett Bielema running backs. I mean, we are a fantasy show, Campus to Canton leagues. If you haven't played in one, you really need to. Reggie Love, Josh McCray, they might be low end, probably running back 3s, given that they're going to split time, but you might have some touchdown upside there. But moving forward, I want to watch Caden Fegan, who's from Illinois. I believe he was Mr. Football in the state of Illinois.
I think so.
He is a 6'3", 240-pound running back. Now he's playing running back at Illinois, but he played quarterback. He played defensive end. He played linebacker. He played everything in high school, and now he's going to focus on playing running back. Very athletic player. Doesn't play as physically as you'd like for a player his size. But I mean, that's understandable. If you're playing quarterback, that's not necessarily a physical position, but he is a player that I'm tracking. One of my favorite 3-star prospects in this class is Cal Swanson. Cal Swanson, coming from the state of Oklahoma, had 1 FBS offer. 1. And that was to Illinois. I think that has something to do with the team around him. His team was terrible. I'm talking about, you would see Cal Swanson dodge a defender, take a hit from a linebacker and throw it to a wide receiver who was wide open, and the wide receiver would drop the ball, that sort of stuff. Very much a dual threat ability. And I don't recall Brett Bielema having worked with, a guy who could actually move. I mean, let's go back to, I think Ryan Mallett was one of Brett Bielema's quarterbacks. These guys just like stationary guys. So if I'm in I shouldn't say that. So Caden Fegan is definitely getting drafted because of the athleticism and the system. Cal Swanson, you need to consider him, put him on a watch list, and just kind of track his progress. It's not going to be this year, and it may not be next year, but he's someone that I'm going to keep tabs on there for Illinois. And again, I just like the direction that they have going there.
I like Cal Swanson too. By the way, so he's athletic, like dual threat, but he also has a really strong arm. He ranks 6th in max velocity over expected, which is a metric that we track at Campus2Canton, which just says, like, based on the expected play, how quick do you expect the ball to get from point A to point B? Swanson was consistently beating his counterparts in that metric. So he has a really nice arm. I think he's an interesting prospect.
I think he actually ranked 4th, if I remember correctly. I don't have.
Maybe.
I think it was better. I think it was 4th in velocity over expected. So strong arm, and he can move. And he's kind of not really afraid to throw the ball in the tight windows. Nebraska, they got a new coach there in Matt Rule. Matt Rule coming from Carolina to Nebraska, rebuilding a program there. I don't even really know what to say particularly about this team. I know that I like Malachi Coleman, who is a freshman wide receiver in this class, 6'2", 3, 200 pounds, 205 pounds, somewhere around there. A big body, but he's also athletic. Was a great 200-meter runner. Played in the Polynesian Bowl. Had 2 touchdowns in the Polynesian Bowl. Mox, I'd hate to just throw it to you with a broad question, but what are your thoughts about Nebraska and what Matt Rule can do this year?
So if you remember Matt Rule prior to his Carolina days, he went from Temple, honestly rebuilt that program and got them to almost double-digit wins. He may have hit double-digit wins, but at Temple, that's pretty impressive. Goes to Baylor, post Art Briles and the heinous acts that were committed there, and basically they were given what is the modern version of a death penalty. Within 2 years, he had that program competing. He's a program rebuilder, and this is exactly what this program needs after the Scott Frost era. It was just consistently underperforming, consistently losing close games, consistently just not being there. They have high expectations. Nebraska is a not probably not anymore, but they were once a blue blood program. Like that is their expectation. I don't think that's true anymore, but that's what they think. I don't think this year is the year. 6.5 is a totally fair number. I project them at 6.4, so right on the money. I just will never, ever, ever, ever bet an over for a Marcus Satterfield coached offense. I dealt with him in South Carolina for the last few years. I know what kind of offense he runs. It's terrible. So vanilla, so plain, not creative. And it stinks because I think Jeff Sims, their starting quarterback, who's a transfer from Georgia Tech, is a pretty fun player if he can stay healthy. I just don't think he's going to get utilized that way at all. So I like the way that this team's trending. I like the offensive line. They're returning, I think, 4 starters. It's a good unit. The defense is kind of intact. He didn't lose a lot in the portal when he came over, replacing Frost. I just can't do it. I think this number is perfect in terms of the win total.
I think they're on that week 0 slate against Minnesota, August 31st. I don't know if there is a week before August 31st.
There is.
Okay.
It's like FIU plays UTEP that week.
Gotcha.
I'm just thinking of the first game that came to my head.
They take on Colorado on September 9th. I'll actually be at that game. That'll be an exciting one. Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, Michigan, Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa. Who's closer, Chris, to contending in the Big Ten in your perspective, Illinois or Nebraska?
Illinois. I trust the infrastructure that's already there. I like Brett Bielema a lot as well. Ryan Walters is a bummer, but he was going to leave anyway. Like he was just that talented of a coach. So I like what Illinois is doing, at least in terms of closer contention. Nebraska's program has a much higher ceiling, though, if they can get it kicking, because they have way more money coming in from boosters and whatnot.
Well, I mean, they have that history with Eric Crouch and running the option there, before a lot of people listening to this were born. But Mox is right. There was a point at which Nebraska was a force in the they weren't even the Big Ten at the time. Was it the Big 12?
They were in the Big 12 at the time, I think.
They were in the Big 12 at the time. So Nebraska, could they be a team on the rise? By the way, that Big 12 championship game between Texas and Nebraska, one of the best games that you'll ever see. One of the most dominant performances from Ndamukong Suh.
I was going to say it's the Sue game.
He should have won the Heisman Trophy, but they gave it to Mark Ingram because he went to Alabama. Penn State, the Nittany Lions. If there is a team that's going to compete with Michigan and Ohio State in this conference, it's going to be the Penn State Nittany Lions. There is a chance, small chance, a non-zero chance, that Drew Aller is the best quarterback in the country. This is going to be his first year starting. But when it comes to, I got him as my quarterback 3. So to say that he's the best quarterback in the country isn't that far off.
I have him 3 as well, but he's not better than Caleb Williams, and he's not going to be this season. We got to rein it in a little bit. I know you're a big fan, but we got to rein it in a little bit.
When it comes to tools, though,
he's Josh Allen.
He's Josh Allen without the rushing ability. He doesn't have the rush.
I think he's a better rusher than, maybe he's not Josh Allen, but he's a pretty solid rusher, I think, or at least can do it.
He's a big lumbering mover, just like Josh Allen. I don't know that he's as fluid as Josh Allen, but all the throws that you see, when Josh Allen goes to one side of the field and throws back to the other, Drew Aller can do that. And he showed flashes of brilliance against Ohio last year. Showed flashes of brilliance against, I think it was Purdue. Had a couple of throws in the Purdue game where I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I want to see. One of the things that I like to see from high schools and quarterback is a level of difficulty on their throws. One level of difficulty is anticipation. Anticipation to me is you have a wide receiver running into an area, and before they throw before they turn around, the ball is already in the air, throwing to a space. And Drew Aller is confident enough to do that time in and time out. That's how you get tight window throws, is when you anticipate the opening, and he does that. To do that in high school, you just don't see it a lot. I saw it from Dante Moore, saw it from one Devin Brown at Ohio State that we'll talk about next week, and I saw it from one Drew Aller on a consistent basis. He has the potential to be a number 1 overall pick. We will continue to break this team down. When we come back from break, It's Felix Sharpe, Chris Moxley. This is Campus to Canton on Better Sports Network.
Campus to Canton.
Brees Hall right now, and I've talked to plenty of high-stakes players, I'm sure you have too, Kev. Had Hall not torn his ACL last year, he might have been the 101 in drafts this year. That's how good he was looking last year, and obviously with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. At the 305, running back 11 behind Derrick Henry and Ramondre Stevenson, right ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee Harris. Your thoughts on him as a mid-third round pick? How have you been attacking him? Have you been getting him at that spot so far this year?
Yeah, if I start out with two wide receivers, Brees Hall is right at the top of the queue coming into the third. If I knew he'd be healthy for week one, I was still a little.
Well, he'd be going higher than the mid third.
Right. He may go 101 or well, RB1 at least.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know that even if he's healthy in spring and the summer, I still like if I'm running a team, if I'm the coach, I'm bringing him back slow. Like he's on a pitch count. Like I want him for the end of the season because I got Aaron Rodgers for the playoffs, right? Like even if he's fully healthy, I would work him in slow. But that is actually what you want. Like he's still going to get the high value touches. So yeah, if we know he's healthy, he's a first rounder. So like if he's sitting there in the third, especially when I get two wide receivers to start, I'll take Hall all day.
Yeah, it almost makes me think that the uncertainty with Brees Hall has made him unfairly fall too far, right? Like because we're talking about the team here in June. They're still hoping that he's ready for week one. This is not, we'll see what happens. We're taking it day by day. We're liking how he's coming along. No, they still think by week one. And the fact that we have that timeline, I think, maybe bumps him up, especially as the drafting season gets deeper and deeper here in July and August. Maybe we start seeing him go up the boards as well.
And Felix is muted.
We're professionals.
Yeah.
We're professionals here, Chris Moxley. We know exactly what it is that we're doing. Play the Real-Time Sports Daily Pick'em contest. Set a lineup of player props. Hit all of them and win. Baseball, golf, and more. Go to rtsports.com/alarm. That's rtsports.com/alarm. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-GAMBLER. Real-Time Sports. First-time depositors get 100% instant match of up to $200 with the deposit code ALARM23 or BSN23. I want to get Anthony in here to grade us here in a second, but one thing that I forgot that I am looking forward to in 2023 is Texas back?
I almost said it, by the way, non-ironically, because I know what you're doing.
No.
Oh, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You got this vendetta against Quinn Ewers and the Texas program. I actually think Texas is back. So I was going to say it non-ironically. You are just doing it to dunk on me, dunk on Matthew, who isn't even here. The audience knows too. They know you well enough at this point that they're knowing that you're being a trickster.
There are more players in that Texas program than Quinn Ewers, your alleged savior.
Yeah.
Everybody points to this Alabama game that he had last year.
First quarter, he would have won that game, man.
Where he threw like 8 of those 12 passes behind the line of scrimmage or around the line of scrimmage.
What?
Those
we don't have to rehash it. We can talk about that when we get to the Big 12.
We can talk about it, but I am looking forward to So that wide receiver core has the potential to be really, really good. Between Isaiah Nayor, who didn't play last year, Jonte Cook is a freshman who's coming in. Xavier Worthy supposedly dealt with a broken hand last year, and he has a.
You'd hope so
Hollywood-
because he dropped like every other pass coming his way.
He did. But he has a Hollywood Brown level ceiling, I would say. So, potential first round NFL pick, smaller. I think Hollywood Brown is actually the perfect comp for Xavier.
They're both like 165.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to. Come on, Quinn Ewers. Let's get this thing going. Let's go back to Penn State here. Oh, I'm sorry, Anthony. Anthony, get in here. Tell us how we did the second segment. Come on, let's go.
I even changed up the music for you a little bit. There was too much rock going on. I was like, let me, pump some fists here coming back.
I felt good about the music. I thought that was indicative.
It was a good start, and then you muted yourself.
Yeah.
Do we take points away for that, or?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. That's when you turn an assignment a day late and you get 10 points off.
Yeah, we definitely did that. Okay.
That's all right. We'll pass.
Okay. Passing grade is good. They can't all be winners. And we don't know what we're doing. So, Penn State, if there is a team that is going to compete with Michigan and Ohio State this year, it's got to be Penn State. I mean, Chris, you mentioned them potentially being one of the fourth team in the playoff. Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, this is probably one of the best backfields in the country. Reminds me of the Darren McFadden and Felix Jones backfields, or the Lawrence Maroney and Marion Barber backfield there at Minnesota.
Was Peyton Hillis not in the Darren McFadden backfield, by the way?
Peyton Hillis was in the Darren. And I feel like there's one more player that I'm forgetting.
In the Arkansas backfield?
In the Arkansas backfield. That was the fourth guy. But yes, Peyton Hillis was.
It could be. I mean, that was – or the Auburn one, Cadillac Williams, right? There was – who else?
Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown.
Yeah.
Ronnie Brown. Yeah, Ronnie Brown there at Auburn.
This could be that. I'm on board with that comp.
That's back when running backs would go like number 3 overall in the draft.
Whoops.
But Penn State, a threat. Let me ask you this way: is Penn State a threat to Michigan or Ohio State in this conference?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I love this team. Like, I think there's so many ways that they can outperform expectations, and that is a win against Ohio State or a win against Michigan, and I think both are within the range of outcomes for sure. It's just a deep team. They return. So what's great is they didn't really lose much to the NFL draft. So Olu Fashanu returned. He's probably the second tackle next year after Joel at Notre Dame. Kalen King is their best corner. He's better than Joey Porter Jr. was last year. Like Chop Robinson is probably a first round edge guy. Like, they have at least three first rounders on this team in this coming draft. And that doesn't include a guy like Nick Singleton, who's probably a first rounder, Drew Aller, who might be a potential first rounder. I mean, this team is loaded with talent, both sides of the line. I think the question that you have is, are the receivers good enough? They brought in Dante Cephas from Kent State. They have Kendra Lambert-Smith still. I don't know who the other guy is going to be there, the third. I mean, we had some good play from some guys in spring, but nobody really emerged. Good tight ends. Theo Johnson, if he can stay healthy, put it together. Really athletic dude out of Windsor, Canada. Yeah, I really like this team. I think they could be really good. Just the question is, and I think the biggest question possibly in the country this year is, will Drew Aller take the leap and become a top 5-10 quarterback in the country? Because if they do, then Penn State's probably going to the playoff, because I think they have an overall better talented roster than Michigan does.
The over-under on this team is 9.5. You get 138 on that. They start the season off against a West Virginia team that's probably down. Then they get Delaware, Illinois, Iowa, and that's the whiteout here. The whiteout is Iowa, Northwestern.
It is.
UMass is homecoming. Ohio State, Indiana, Maryland, and Michigan. and then Rutgers, Michigan State. I mean, the thing about Penn State, Mox, is that they have to have one of the hardest schedules in the country with both Ohio State and Michigan on the schedule. I mean, it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah. I mean, so I have them favored in 10 games. And in all of those games, their expected win percentage is 70% or better. So like that's essentially like 8-ish points that they're favored by. So I would bet the over of 9.5, 10. You can get it at 130 on -130 at BetMGM. I just don't see this. I don't see the third loss is the thing. Like, where does that come? Right? Like I told you earlier that I have that a projected toss up with Michigan, that like a neutral field, it's essentially a pick 'em. I have Penn State favored because they're home. I think they're going to lose to Ohio State. I think Ohio State's a better team. If everything like comes together with Kyle McCord quarterback as well, like they also have quarterback questions, but I don't see the third loss on the schedule. I'm trying so hard to find it. Maybe it's Iowa and they catch them, but I just don't see it.
Dante Cephas transfers over from Kent State, and as much love as we've given to Devontae Walker, given his size, speed, and athleticism, a lot of people think that Cephas was the best wide receiver for Kent State last year, and he transfers over here to be maybe the number one for Drew Aller. Now, Penn State has had wide receivers transfer, big-time wide receivers transfer 2 years in a row. Mitchell Tinsley came over from Western Kentucky last year. This year, you get Dante Cephas. I know that you like the tight end room. If you're in a freshman draft, playing in Campus2Canton leagues, you are drafting one Andrew Rappelier. Rappelier.
I am. I'm probably the only person drafting him because I take him before everybody else does. So that if you're going to draft with me, yes.
Well, why do you like him? Why do you like Rappelier?
He's already 6'4", 250 pounds in the best strength and conditioning program in the country that has consistently churned out quality tight ends. Like the math is honestly kind of that simple for me. I think he's a really good prospect I think he can block at a acceptable level coming into college. Like I think he's a pretty good blocker, especially for high school. Like I don't think it'd be crazy if you saw him in 2 tight end sets this year. Like I think that he's refined enough, and I think he's a good catcher of the football. He reminds me of, I don't want to say Dalton Kincaid because that's a bad comp, but he's a better route runner and pass catcher than Michael Mayer is. But I'm trying to think of a good comp. I don't know if I have a good comp. The comp in our guy is TJ Hawkinson, which honestly isn't that bad. But he already got the size, already 250 as a freshman, and he's super athletic. Like there's so much to like about the situation, and I just think he's a good player. So I'm very aggressive on Rappelier.
Mox, the last 2 teams that we were going to talk about today, Northwestern and Rutgers.
I could talk about them in 2 minutes if you want.
I was just going to say, is there a reason? Is there any reason to watch either of these programs? Northwestern's over under is 3.5. Rutgers, I think, is 3 or 3 is also 3.5.
It's 3.5, 4, depending where you look.
Okay. Give me the 2 minutes on Northwestern and Rutgers, because other than Gavin Wimsett, I can't think of a single player between these two that I would even consider. Oh, you know what? Samuel Brown at Rutgers, running back Samuel Brown at Rutgers is somebody I would consider. But
and I'll give you a third name at Rutgers, Johnny Shepard, who is a quarterback coming in that is 6'2", 235 pounds and runs a 4.5. That's a player that I'd be drafting. Kind of more polished. He was going to a prep school that is kind of known for developing players. And so I think he's pretty interesting coming in. But I mean, neither of these teams are ready to go. They're both bottom 5 offenses in the country. I think you're going to have a tough time with watching both of these teams because they won't score. They're going to average like 12 to 15 points a game. The next question I have is, how long does Pat Fitzgerald have left as head coach at Northwestern? Because I think it's coming to an end soon if David Braun, their hire, a defense coordinator from North Dakota State, doesn't work out. And then can Shiano actually do anything, or is Rutgers just a perennial 3 to 5 win team in the Big Ten? I think it's probably the latter.
I mean, Shiano had that team moving a decade ago, or a little bit more than a decade ago.
Decades ago. I mean, they were a top 10 team in the country. They finished top 10 team in the country the one year, and that lost at the end of the year to Now I don't even remember. West Virginia, probably. They also ended West Virginia's perfect season too. So like, you know, those old Big East battles, Rutgers was the top 10 team in the country. But
it's just hard for them in the Big Ten. I mean, they're just not competitive in the Big Ten.
Let's not
forget.
They took the check and took the losses. That's what it is.
They took the check and took the losses. But Rutgers, his success at Rutgers got Greg Schiano, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coaching job. So, all right, we got a few minutes left here, Mox. If we had to draft from just these teams in the Campus2Canton League, just these teams that we talked about today, Michigan, Illinois, Penn State, Nebraska, Northwestern, Rutgers, and Rutgers. I'm guessing Marvin Harrison Jr. goes first. And then who are we taking next? Are you taking Nick Singleton? Are you taking
Nick Singleton? Because Nick Singleton has the potential to be the best RB prospect since Bijan, in the Saquon Barkley mold of like huge size, like size, speed, specimen, crazy athlete, which we already saw year one. I mean, his breakaway rush rate was ridiculous. So I'm just betting on him and the talent and the development that we've already seen from him through year one.
Well, and then my question would be is who's next? Is it so unless I'm missing somebody, I think the two candidates to go next are either Donovan Edwards or Drew Aller.
In super flex leagues, you got to take Aller, right? We think that he has tremendous potential. And I think Edwards is a good player, but I don't know that he is the Jahmyr Gibbs level player that he needs to be a productive NFL player. Like, he's a good pass catcher. He's not great. He's not elite, I should say. He's a very good pass catcher. I don't want to downplay that. And so he's explosive, but not like, I think he's fine. Good player, but not great.
His, you know what? And I said Marvin Harrison Jr. would go first. We didn't even talk about Ohio State today, so throw that out the window. But Donovan Edwards' comp has been Alvin Kamara. It was Alvin Kamara coming out of West Bloomfield High School in Michigan. And when you watched him at West Bloomfield High School, he legitimately lined up at wide receiver, out wide, and would run post and would catch the ball and run away from players. He's also a bigger running back. He's like 6'2". And then
he had a 10 reception game as a true freshman in the Big Ten. Like, that's pretty hard to do for anyone at the running back position.
10 reception game as a freshman for Jim Harbaugh, who doesn't like to throw to the running back. Next week, we're going to cover the rest of the teams in the Big Ten. Matthew will be back to cover Ohio State. We'll see you then, everybody. Peace.